I think we can start now.
Yes, I'm recording.
Okay, so just let me share the screen again. Okay, so good morning, Pittsburgh. Can I say that? Is it good morning? And good afternoon, Vienna. Are you in Vienna? Yeah. And Athens. I hope someone is joining us from Greece and Mount Scopus in the west. And welcome everybody who joined us. My name is Sinai Rusinek, and I will be chairing this event that was organized by the Leonid Nevzlin Research Center for Russian and East European Jewry. I would like to open by thanking Dr. Semyon Goldin, that I hope will manage to join us if he hasn't already, and the center for this initiative, and express what I believe to be our joint hope that this is only one step in the direction of digital humanities in the center and among its community. And before I present our speakers, I would like to take a moment to introduce those of our guests that need introduction to the digital humanities community here in Israel, with the hope that I can find the right window to do that. Yep. Okay, so it's a small community. Can you see the colorful picture, right? Without all my personal messages around it? Okay. So it's a very lively community. It's rather small. If we talk numbers, and we're talking about the Facebook group that you can see the address to, and you're very welcome to join. We have about 1,500 members. Those of you who would prefer Twitter, we normally communicate with the DH Jewish handle, although of course this is not exclusive in any way. We have non-Israeli members in the digital humanities and non-Jewish issues also among our Twitter communities. And we've had this last year, our activities change from year to year according to the community. This last year we had a series of monthly meetups with some people that volunteered to present their work. It was fascinating, and we have the recordings. We just need to figure out where to maybe store them and make them available. I would not want to take more time, so I will start by welcoming our speakers. First, each one will talk about 20 minutes, and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions after the talks, and also I hope that we'll have some discussion among us at the end. Professor David Birnbaum is professor and co-chair of the Department of Slavic Languages and Literature at the University of Pittsburgh, and an expert on electronic text technology. His electronic text work intersects with his research in medieval Slavic manuscript studies, and he also writes about issues in the philosophy of markup. For those of you who never heard about markup or why it is an art that merits a philosophy, I'm sure that after the talk we will have more, we can make sense of this and it will become clear. He will talk about applications of digital humanities to the study of Slavic texts. Please continue. I'll stop the share now.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Can you all hear me? Yes, okay. It's a pleasure to join you. I am sorry that I can only do it from afar. I've been to Jerusalem once. It was in the late 1960s. perhaps next time I can join you in person. I was asked today to speak about, basically to give a tour of some of the projects I've built or constructed that involve the application of digital methods to the study of Slavic manuscripts and texts. Most of these materials are medieval in nature, although some are not. And I'm not going to go into great detail during the presentation about the methods. It's basically going to be one slide per project or one slide per visualization in the project. But what I'd like to communicate with this is how it's possible to use visualizations when dealing with digital texts to tell a story about the text that would be difficult to tell otherwise. So the work that I'm reporting on, and a lot of the work that I do, is not as much about the analysis and the computation as it is about using computational methods to communicate information about the documents and to communicate research results. I'm going to say a few words about the type of digital humanities that I practice, because there are, as your group knows, many types of digital humanities. I'll talk a bit about how I understand digital philology. I do some work on digital editions, mostly of medieval Slavic manuscripts. And I'm going to introduce, not that it's original, but I will emphasize the concept of a digital workstation. It's a definition of digital editions that I don't hear very often. I'll spend some time on visualization because I think that is an area where we still have much to accomplish and much to learn. I'll talk a little bit about how my undergraduate students at my university learned to do the kind of work that I do. All of my teaching materials are open access. So if there are members of your community who are interested in learning about this kind of work, they're welcome to drop in and learn what they can from those materials. I'm possibly the oldest member of this meeting. And when I started working in digital humanities, it was called Humanities Computing. That name has changed. There are lots of legends about why it changed, but one of the ways I think about the definition about the change from humanities computing to digital humanities is that it's not a type of computing, it's a type of humanities. It's the recruitment of digital methods in order to conduct what's ultimately the kinds of humanities research, in my case, mostly philological research, that we've always conducted. There are other types of digital humanities. What I focus on is computational in nature. So people who are engaged in media studies or in studying the sociology of the internet are also participating in digital humanities, but not of the type that I'll talk about today. One of the things that I emphasize in my own work and in my own teaching is building tools rather than just using them. A lot of digital humanities workshops that I encounter are things like how to build your project site using package X. And that if package X meets your needs, that saves you a lot of work. The people who developed package X are smart and they did a good job of it. But if you start with the software, then you are constrained by what the software is able to do. So what I've tried to do in my own work is imagine what I want to do in my editions, for example, even before I know how to do it, and then figure out how to do it. So the research question comes first, and then the application of the platform comes later. I am not trained as a programmer or a software developer, or God forbid, a computer scientist. My degrees are in historical linguistics, and everybody my age who does what I do is self-taught. And I say that by way of saying everything I do is fully within the reach of humanists. It isn't something for which you need to hire a developer. One of the well, let me move on to some of the projects I'm going to illustrate. I want to show, I do some editions of manuscripts, and I'll show an edition of the Ultra Slavonic Codex Supersliensis that I worked on in collaboration with the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. I do editions of texts. I was one of the editors of a critical edition of the Rus Primary Chronicle, the Povest Временных Лет. I do some work on textology and codicology. Some of you may have encountered the Repertorium of Old Bulgarian Literature and Letters, which is a project that was developed in the Institute of Literature at the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. And the goal was to look for patterns of agreement in the makeup of mixed content miscellany manuscripts. I've done a bit of work on digital history. One is a site about Kievan dynastic marriages. Also some work on medieval Slavic monologies on the calendars of saints that one finds in the backs of various types of manuscripts. One of the newer projects, your company is the first one to see this, is a teaching tool that I have been developing recently for teaching some of my students to read medieval Slavic texts, and I'm using the Digenis Akritis materials for this. And then finally, I'm going to spend most of my time on visualization because that's where I think interesting stuff is happening, and I'll introduce those as I get to them. As I said, I have one slide here because the internet always fails when you are doing live demonstrations. These are all canned slides, but the sites are all live. I have the URLs here and you are welcome to visit them. I'll be happy to share the slides later. The Supersliensis is an edition of a manuscript. The production was funded by UNESCO and organized by the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. The 3 libraries that own the pieces of the manuscript contributed new high-quality photographs, and we put together an edition that has the photographs, the photographic facsimiles on one side. We built a little magnifying glass so that you can turn that off. You can toggle it off if it gets in the way. But if you want to zoom in on some piece of the manuscript, you can do that. Some of you may know that there are canned packages that will do this. There's a visualization tool called Mirador that everybody is using nowadays. It has far more capabilities than this, but it's also very heavyweight and it has a lot of features that I didn't need. The magnifying glass here is half a screen of code. It's very light, it's very fast. It's exactly what we needed for this project. I thought it's a good example of why it's sometimes advantageous to build it yourself. We have the interlinear Old Church Slavonic and Greek on the other side. These were, we corrected the Old Church Slavonic. We started with the Helsinki edition. We corrected it against the facsimiles. We took the Greek from Mario Capaldo's edition that was published in Bulgaria in the 70s and put this together. You can scroll through the pages. You can jump to a page. There's a table of contents where you can find a particular work. So this was intended for us to experiment with some of the things that, that one could do with an edition of a manuscript. I also looked at editions of texts. I was involved in an edition of the Rus Primary Chronicle that was produced at Harvard University under the general editorship of Donald Ostrovsky. We prepared new transcriptions of all of the principal witnesses, and this was originally intended as a paper publication. It's out in paper. It's 3 fat volumes from Harvard University Press, but because of the way we had prepared it, it was very easy to mount it as a digital edition. So there's a reading view at the top, which is scrollable. This is our reconstruction. When you click on a line, you get an interlinear collation on the bottom where you could see the different readings. And one of the things we've been working on most recently is arranging the interlinear collation so that we can line up the parts of the words by columns, which makes it easier to see where they agree and where they disagree. Some of you may be familiar with the print edition where each of the manuscript lines is just written continuously. And because the lines are short, it's not that you can't compare them, but this layout is one of the things that we were able to do because we were using digital methods. The Repertory of Old Bulgarian Literature and Letters is basically a metadata project. So we don't have full manuscript transcriptions, but we have the tables of contents and we have all the codicological information you would normally find in a manuscript description. And I have a few slides about this project because it has a number of views. So one of the things you can do is you can search by particular features. You can search by country, by city, by repository. You can search by title, and you can pull up a list of documents in our collection. We have about 160 manuscripts in there now. So this is one way, if you know what you're looking for, you can zero in. So here I've looked for manuscripts in Bulgaria. This is just the top of the page. For each manuscript, you can pull up a list of the contents. You can toggle the language. So we have this in Bulgarian, English, and Russian. The titles of the works are clickable, and if you click on one of the titles, you get a list of all the manuscripts that contain that title. So because our main focus is how to compare the contents of manuscripts, we wanted to be able to say, you want to find the manuscripts that contain, oh, the Physiologus, and you know it's in a particular manuscript, go to it, click on the title, you get all of the others. And we have a little bit of other information here, but we have more complete codicological information elsewhere. We also have a view of that corresponds more closely to what you would find in a traditional manuscript catalog. These are all generated on the fly from the same XML files, from the same underlying source files. So if we make a correction, if we add new information, everything is updated live because it's all generated live. You have access to the raw XML underneath. Everything we do is open source and open access. One of the motivations that we had in putting together the repertorium the way we did was that we wanted to think of it not just as a place where you read stuff, but as a workstation. And I compare this to what I sometimes call silicon paper. That is to say, something that looks like a paper edition, except you read it on a screen. And we've all seen editions like this. You conduct a search, you get a reading view, you look at it, and then you say, okay, thank you very much. And you go back and you do another search. And our goal was to anticipate everywhere a user might want to go from any of our pages and build in links. So you should never have, if we've done our job correctly, you should never have to hit the back button unless you want to do something completely different. Everywhere you go to a list of the works, each of the works is clickable. You go to a list of manuscripts, the places, the repositories, everything else there is clickable too. So we tried to build in the kind of interaction that would let people lose themselves in the resources. So there's no starting point. There is a starting point, but you don't have to start there. Everywhere you go, you should be able to go somewhere else. There are no dead ends. The genealogy site that I built with Christian Raffensperger was designed to explore Kievan dynastic marriages. Chris has published monographs about this. Some of you may know them, but we wanted to be able to navigate through the resources. So you can search here by person, by location, by date. You can call up information about the individuals, and these pages are filled with links. Some of them are to other main pages on the site. Some of them are to secondary references. So once again, we tried to build this as that kind of workstation where you don't just call up a page and read it and go call up another one. If you are interested in Vladimir Monomach, you might be interested in the places where he ruled or in the members of his family, and all of that is accessible without going back and doing a new search. With Cynthia Vakaraliska, we put together a site for looking at the contents of medieval Slavic monologies. So here we asked for the entries in the Banitsa Gospel for the month of September. They're reported by dates. We have the entries. The monology entries include saints that are coded in red, saint sets, that is to say groups of saints that occur together, say groups of martyrs, those are in blue, and then events like the Nativity of the Virgin, which are coded in green. So you can see at a glance what's being recorded on each date. These are also generated live, but because we've done them in a formal manner, we can create different views. Here we did a search for Saint Arnulf, who is an unusual saint in Slavic manuscripts or in Eastern manuscripts in general, but he shows up in a few. And you can also do comparisons. So we asked for a collection of manuscripts. Those are listed on the columns. What happened on November, how did we do this? On November 6th, we did the month first. So if a saint is present, we coded it. If not, we didn't. And therefore, you can see easily from this kind of page which manuscripts have saints in common and which ones don't. We do something else with those comparisons later, which I'll get to. This is the newest site. This is something we're building for teaching students to read medieval manuscripts. So we took Torogov's edition of Digeni Sakritis from the Library of Early Slavic Monuments that's run out of Pushkinsky Dom. The transcriptions, we took the transcription just as he did it, and from one of the manuscripts, and that's on the top line. We did a normalization according to principles we've documented elsewhere on the second line. The system automatically highlights places where we normalized. It knows where there are differences. And where we added annotations for our students, it highlights it in pink. And if you mouse over something pink, as I've done here, a little bit of commentary shows up. So the idea is that our students can read this. They can see what Torogov transcribed from the manuscript. They can see how we normalized it. They can see where they're different. And they can see annotations where we provided them. We will replace Torogov's transcriptions with our own at some point, but for the moment, we're using his because they were easily accessible. But we have our own. I'm doing this project together with Robert Romanchuk. Some of you may be familiar with his work on a new edition of the Slavic Dienis. So this teaching tool is something that we're building on top of his edition work. The plectogram is a visualization we developed for the Repertorium project. And the idea here was to help us see which manuscripts have readings in common. So each of these columns this is in response to a search we conducted. We asked for manuscripts that had, I've forgotten now what we asked for here, but certain texts in common. Each column is a manuscript. Each cell in the column is a work in the manuscript. And where they have shared readings, where they have shared texts, we've drawn parallel lines between adjacent columns. So you can see at a glance that the second and third manuscripts are almost identical. The third and fourth are very close, except for this little gap at the beginning. In order to make everything fit, we used reference numbers instead of titles, but the reference numbers don't mean anything. So if you mouse over one, the title pops up, and you can do that in 3 different languages. So this was intended to be an exploratory tool. You can't see this here, but this is all live. If you click on the manuscript header, you get the full description. If you click on one of the cells, you get all the manuscripts that contain that particular text. You can drag and drop these columns to rearrange them if you want to draw the lines between different columns. Some of the views that we get out of these, we call these plectograms. This was a term that was developed by Hugh Olmsted for his work on the manuscript tradition of Maxim Grek. And the idea was that it would show the places where compilations did and didn't agree. So here we are comparing a bunch of prayer books. So these are what the Bulgarian tradition refers to as fixed content miscellanies. They're not fixed, of course, they have different contents. What's fixed is the type. These are prayer books. They contain primarily prayers. And we can see which ones have things in common and which ones don't. With mixed content miscellanies, where you could have texts of completely different genres intermixed, you tend to get more variation, but you can see even here, there's a great deal of similarity in the 3 on the right, much less in the ones on the left. We're getting this duplication and this crossing because some texts occur twice. And that probably happened because the manuscripts were compiled from multiple sources. So the scribe of the ancestor of these 3 on the right copied something at the beginning, stopped somewhere in the middle, copied from another source, and either didn't notice or didn't care that there were texts with the same titles as something he had already copied. But this is the sort of correspondence that's very easy to see with this kind of visualization and very difficult to see if you're just looking at a list of titles. Hugh Olmsted referred to what we see here as something called focusing, where there are shared texts in the same order in these 2 manuscripts, but there are a lot more gaps in the one on the left. And there are 2 ways this can come about. Either the source looked like something on the left, and the person who compiled the manuscript on the right went through it in order, but selected the texts he cared about. Alternatively, he copied selectively from something at the right. So this doesn't tell you how this relationship arose, but what it does tell you is what it looks like, and it draws your attention to the relationships among manuscripts in a corpus that merit more attention, and you can concentrate on those instead of those that are likely to be less interesting. And as the corpus grows, these visualizations become more important. We see here an example where the second one from the left represents a compilation from a source that looked like the one to the left of it, and a source that looked like the one to the right of it. So we can see that up at the top, it's similar to one, down at the bottom, it's similar to another. That crossover, which I focused on here, came about because of rebinding, and we know that because we were able to look at the manuscript. So these were not copied in crossing order, rather at some point they were in the same order, and then somebody rebound one of them and moved things around. We also have views of the entire corpus. So here's 160 odd manuscripts. We clustered them according to patterns of similarity in their contents. And for our purposes, this is not mathematical similarity. For our purposes, what we meant by similarity is not just do they have the same texts, but do they have them in the same order and without interruption. And we weighted the relationship, and what was underlying this was an assumption that as manuscripts were copied, a scribe would pull a manuscript off the shelf, copy a text, maybe copy the next one, maybe copy the next one, then put it aside and copy from another. Because by and large, in our corpus, they're creating these mixed content miscellanies, which are drawn from a variety of sources. But to the extent that we have not just the same works, but in the same order without interruption, we have stronger evidence for shared textual transmission. And that's really what we're looking for. This does not answer the question. What this does do is tell us what to look at, tell us where there is that type of really pseudo similarity according to the properties we care about. We repurposed this plectogram visualization, this diagram, to illustrate the relationships between the Slova and Malenia of Daniel Zatruchnik. This was also a teaching tool. So we have the texts of the Slova, the sections of the Slova as identified in the standard editions on the left, the Malenia on the right, the diagrams of where they correspond, and you can navigate either in the plectogram, you could click on a number and the columns scroll, or you could scroll a column and click and everything else snaps into view. So this is an opportunity to navigate within this tradition from a variety of perspectives and see what the two text types, the Slova and Malenia, have in common and where they differ. Also working in the Digenist tradition, some of you may have heard Robert speak about this. We were looking at the patterns in a Slavic reconstruction in the manuscript tradition. We provided an English translation, and the interface that we have here lets you toggle off the different parts, lets you change the reporting language from English to Slavic, because we use this as a teaching tool for medieval studies courses where the students are not Slavists. So what we were trying to do was put under the user's control what was going to be shown and what relationships were going to be shown. If we go back to the monology project that we talked about earlier, one of the visualizations that I showed had to do with which saints are represented on which dates. Well, based on that, we hypothesized that manuscripts that have a lot of saints in common are like Facebook users who have a lot of friends in common. They form a network. So what we're able to do is use standard network analysis methods to try to indicate which manuscripts have things in common based on which saints they have in common on shared dates. And we did this with raw numbers. We did it with percentages. We published an article about this, which I can refer you to if you care. But the idea was to take the methods of social network analysis, which have been used largely for social networks, and see whether we could repurpose them for the makeup of these manuscript monologies. Here is the view where we dealt with percentages, which cleans up a lot of the noise, so we can see more easily here where there are strong relationships and where there are weaker ones. I want to switch to, for the last few minutes, switch to a couple of modern visualizations. I took a look together with Sybil and Forrester at Katalina Pavlova's Double Life novel, and we were interested in the extent to which characters participated in different parts of the novel. So our x-axis is the chapters, the y-axis is the extent to which characters are represented. Each of these lines is a character, and you can toggle them on and off individually. We toggled all men in blue and all women in red, and then we toggled Cecilia, our heroine, in green. So we can see that she's the most prominent character in every chapter except one. And in chapter 1, there are 3 female characters who are more prominent than she is. When you mouse over their lines, they identify themselves so we can see who they are. And this then gives us a view on one screen of relationships that we can then go and look at more closely. You can toggle these characters on and off, so you could pick the ones you care about. Our y-axis is not a linear scale. We did it as a quadratic scale because we care very much about the difference between 0 and 1. We do not care about the difference between 160 and 161. So by using a nonlinear scale, we were able to fit everything on one screen and keep everything visible. We also looked in the Pavlova novel about who speaks or thinks to or about whom else. So we have the speakers and thinkers on the x-axis. We have the objects of thought and speech on the y-axis. And where they intersect, we have a bubble of varying size. So we can see at a glance that Cecilia, top row, is shows up frequently, but some of the other characters much less. And the diagonal has a lot of large bubbles because a lot of people either talk about themselves or for internal monologue, for when they're thinking to themselves, we represented that as dialogue with the speaker and the recipient are the same. So this was a way of seeing who was engaged with whom. And what motivated this was Sibyllin's insight that although Cecilia is the most prominent character in the novel, we saw that here, she doesn't really say or do very much. She is the object of attention of the 2 old ladies, Valitskaya, who is this column with a lot of large bubbles, and where's the other one? Vera Vladimirovna, who seems to have something to say to or about everybody. So this gave us a chance to see graphically that Cecilia is present in some ways, but much less important than others. The way we graphed this here was if you are spoken about, you're in green. If you are spoken to, you are in blue. And if you speak, you are in red. So we can see that Cecilia is off the charts as an object, but she's not the highest character in terms of agency, in terms of participating in the kind of actions that move the novel forward. Also in a more modern realm, I'm looking at some properties of Russian poetry and trying to determine computationally the patterns of stress and of rhyme. And I won't go into this in any more detail. What you're looking at here is a mock-up. This was an early sketch of the kind of information I wanted to be able to achieve. I'll be happy to talk more about how much progress we've made and not in the break. But what we have here, we have a poem, we have the stressed vowels are highlighted, we have extracted information about strong and weak syllables, we've indicated the rhyme scheme, we've abstracted away the stressed vowels so we can see patterns of agreement. And this is a visualization that was developed in the 30s that we repurposed in order to show the patterns of strong and weak syllables throughout the poem. As I said at the beginning, my undergraduate students do this kind of work. This is not something that that takes years of experience. They learn the basics in a semester. Some of them continue to do it. Some of them go on to be professional software developers. Some go on to be professors of digital humanities. The teaching materials are all open access, and you are welcome to visit them. If you are not currently building your own projects like this, you can. It's not that hard. I've run a little long, so I'm not going to remind you of everything that I've said because I've already said it, but I will thank you for your attention, and I'll stop talking now, and I would welcome questions or further discussion. And thank you again for the kind invitation.
Thank you, David, for this dazzling presentation. I know, following your last slide, I remember when was the first time I met you. That was in the CenterNet meeting in Chicago, I think. And I remember you were giving a talk about pedagogy, and I didn't know who I envy more, your students for you or you for your students. And I wish people will believe you when you say that this is doable. This is very inspiring. We don't have a lot of time for questions, so maybe if someone has an urgent one that cannot wait for after the talks for the discussion, then we'll continue. If you do have anything urgent, then please just write it in the chat, and we can then go to each one of you by order in the end. I will continue now and present Anastasia Glazanova, who I'm very happy to finally meet. I don't know that we actually met before, and I'm glad that I heard about you before. So this is a good opportunity. Anastasia is an archivist in the Central Archives for the History of the Jewish People. She has extensive experience in the history of art, but her interests are quite diverse, and today they encompass the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy theory and the implementation of new technologies in cultural institutions. She will be presenting JDoc, a new online resource in the field of Jewish studies and Sovietology. Please unmute yourself, and the screen is also yours.
Hello. So first things first, I will be talking about an online resource. So I put the link in our chat now with login and password, since the project is not yet officially launched, and my email in case someone wants to get in touch with me. Okay, so let me start, and like Professor Birnbaum, I will try to do like online presentation on the real website, which is a bit scary, but let's see. For me, this project started, I checked today, almost exactly 3 years ago. It will be 3 years on 22 of June, when we did a test upload to the database, well, since then we continue to work on this project, and so let me just open the website. Since then, project changed several names, so you see now there is discrepancy in the content, and still we still see the old name. The domain name is our new name, and I didn't yet. Well, I think it should be with this dash, and in the program of our event it is without dash. So I'm not used to it yet.
Excuse me. Are you intending to share? Because I don't see the screen.
Yeah, right. Sorry, I've opened it, but I forgot to share. Thanks, Sinai. Okay, so well, let me show you first. This is how it will look soon. This is one of the sketches from the final view of the website. Functionally, so it now looks much less nice. But wait a second, I will open the website. Yeah, right, here it is. I'll switch to English version. But functionally, it is, I would say it is fully ready. So nothing new except for design is awaiting us. And the name is already changed. So when I started to work in this project 3 years ago, there were a lot of materials gathered to that point. So I was presented with a lot of archival documents that needed to be put online, which was the main purpose of our project. So the gathered documents mostly were related to the period of Doctor's Plot affair in Soviet Union, and they came from these were digital copies that came from the archives in former Soviet republics, mostly from Ukraine and Baltic states. Lithuania and Latvia. So the project is supposed to be an instrument for research for historians who are interested in this, more or less this period, but also earlier and later, because we are widening now the scope of the project, and there are already a lot of documents that are from before 40s and from after 50s, but the core of the project are the documents from 40s and 50s. We have few sections, I would say. Most of the biggest one is, as I said, the documents copied from various archival institutions in several countries, but also we started to gather material from personal archives, which is much harder, but also very interesting. And we are starting a video section on the website, which will have relevant interviews. Okay, so I guess I should say some words about technical side of the project. I've done some research, and there are not so many options if you want to put archival material online. The ready solutions mostly are two. One is what is called ATOM, which is abbreviation for access to memory, and the other is Omeka, which has two versions. We use Omeka Classic, so we went for Omeka Classic, which fits better our purposes. And so each month I upload to our system the content, documents plus their metadata. Each month we process about 1,500 to 2,000 pages, something like that, most usually. So the staff of the project is relatively small. We have two catalogers who write annotations to the archival files, an editor who is an experienced archival worker and historian, and who is responsible for our, I'd say, our policies. So one of the major features of our website, as I see it, is that we provide some what is called highly curated content, meaning that, for instance, you have institutions that have huge amount of material, but it is not very well searchable. So in case you want to do a research, you will have to spend a lot of time to find what you actually need. Our the amount of documents that we have probably is much less than a big institution like Holocaust Museum or something like that. I mean, Holocaust Museum in Washington. But we do a very good, I think, work on these materials. So they are very easy, very easily searchable, accessible, and it's quite, I think for a research, it should be very nice to work with this. So our editor is responsible for, well, it was, I think it is mostly his responsibility that we are creating very, very well described and very detailed content. We also have a proofreader, a developer, we realized that we cannot do without a developer. We have a young developer her specialization is full stack developing, a system administrator, a person who converts scans to OCR PDFs, and well, a manager, which is me, who uploads all this to the website as well. Okay, so now let's turn to the website itself. This is how it looks. Here on top, you can see collection structure, which is, as you maybe know, a holy grail of archivistics, meaning that in my field, every document is part of the complex hierarchy of items. So each document is part of an archival file, meaning a folder most often, which is in its turn presented in a list, group of files. Then group of files are united in a font, which is in Russian font, in English fonts. They say it in plural for some reason. And many fonts constitute archives. Therefore, archives are always correctly also in plural, because archives are many archives. Many archives constitute a collection of archives, so to say. So this is a word which is always in plural. So here we got all this structure, which is built. We have countries. Inside of the countries, we have institutions from which we have documents. Inside of institutions, archives from which we have documents, we have fonts, and you can click each font and get to the list of documents we have from there. This is how a preview of a document looks like. So here you get some metadata, which says what's in the document, etc., etc. You can click on the thumbnail and get to the archival file, which is OCR PDF. So the text, if it's, yeah, here you can see it might be, to some extent it is searchable, which is very useful for researchers. So on the other hand, this can be useful if you know what you're looking for, if you're a very experienced researcher and you know that you are looking for documents from specific archives, from specific collection. Otherwise, you can launch a search on the website. I don't know. Let's say Kharkov. We always, for some reason, search for Kharkov. Okay. So we use a widely popular search engine, which is called Elasticsearch, because the search which goes together with Omeka is a Linux-based search, and it works very poorly. So we had to find another solution. So here, what we got some results. Mostly they're divided in two categories. So items are results from the descriptions of the document. And files are results that were found in the PDFs themselves. Okay. Yeah, so you see a lot of gibberish, but nevertheless, this can be useful because, for instance, you can search for a family member, and we had already such cases, and find him inside the archival file, which is of course priceless, and for many persons, because most of these documents are related to persecution of Jews in the Soviet Union. Okay, so what else we have? We've created some filters. You can filter by collection, meaning in which collection and in which archive these documents of which collections and archives you want to see. Okay, we have keywords which are several subjects, not too long of a list, maybe about 20 subjects mostly, and locations. You can filter by the starting date of the file, so you can get to the period that is of interest for you. So I think we achieved pretty nice results in what relates to the search options. The weak part of our project are the keywords, the tags, which are too many, and well, we have a code, and once in a while we export all the keywords, and we make sure that there are no duplicates. For instance, you could see here, there is one with a typo, so they split. So it's quite painstaking to take care of this, but yes, this is the weakest part of the software we use, because it is very complicated to divide two types of keywords. So, ideally, we would like to have subjects and locations separately, but it seems not worth to invest in this for now. So this is how it looks. You can, let's see, choose rabbis and community leaders. Click on them and get all the files that are related to the subject. Overall, also you can get a full list of the documents that are on the website, starting from the last one uploaded to the system. Yeah, you can browse tags from here as well. Yes, I think we also have a bibliography that we for which we use Zotero program. It looks like this. And I would like to finish, I guess, with saying that we're very much looking forward to launch our website and open it, meaning that persons who use it don't have to enter login and password. But for now, everybody is invited to spread the login and password if you know that your colleagues would be interested in these documents for their work. So that's it, I think. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I personally can't wait to look into that. Even though, and this is my confession time, I'm one of the lost generation that stopped speaking Russian, and maybe I should say this is why I'm always so excited when I have new students that I hope that have not forgotten their Russian to be able to work on maybe their parents' history. So just a personal comment. Maybe I can tell you that you know how WhatsApp works in parallel to the sessions. I have while you were showing the website, I have a friend that says she's using Omeka and was very happy to discover this. And of course, when I saw you using Zotero, so Digital Humanists are excited about strange things.
I'm an expert in Omeka already. I mean, not myself, but I have a good team of colleagues who are experts. So if someone needs to set up an Omeka or something, I'm volunteering. Yeah, I've said really quite a lot of Omekas for now. So
yeah, a lot of Omekas. Okay, that's great because it's really good to have people who are using best practice tools around and not be too long. And the same is true about Zotero, I think, and having your bibliography in Zotero. So this is just comments beyond the domain. I think we can allow a couple of minutes for questions. If anybody has one, we can use the chat. Maybe if I can allow myself one, can you say what OCR software you're using to make
we use Abby Fine Reader. I think not the latest version, but some of the previous ones, but it doesn't make much difference. We simply got a server version of I think Abby Fine Reader 14 or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And were you thinking of also making this into a portal that can accept also documents from other sources?
Yes. Well, Omeka has another version which is called I forgot for a minute. Doesn't matter, but the point is that there is a version of Omeka which allows to create multiple websites and the joint, so you can combine your documents as you wish. You can make like a website with two databases, with two institutions, or for free, or combine them and allow a user to browse in a specific database or in all of the, like it works more or less like Europeana, meaning that there is a portal which has a lot of huge amount of information, which is maybe not perfectly aligned according to fields and so on, but it allows you to browse everything. And on the other hand, you have separate projects that can where you can tailor it more accurately, I would say. Like, yeah.
Yael is writing the package you're referring to.
Yeah, right. Thank you. It's Omeka, right? Correct.
Okay, Ilya, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. So thank you very much for this very important project to ask. So I just browsed through the website and I saw that the data from Ukraine is not always of the like the best quality. I mean, is it allowed to use something like scanner in the opened archives? I don't know, in SBU, in the security service of Ukraine, or it's kind of they don't have this kind of infrastructure.
So it depends. Well, by the way, we have here a person from SBU archives, so maybe he is better fit to answer this question. Andrei? No. Okay, so I will answer. Like in SBU, from SBU, I've seen two kinds of copies. Ones that are really okay, not very beautiful, not something outstanding, but like quite okay. Other ones that were done in a different way, I don't know exactly which, but they have very poor resolution, which is a problem. Also, on our website, we have documents from various regional archives in Ukraine. And there are different cases. There are some nicely done copies. There are copies that were done by individuals who were sent to these archives. So sometimes they are not very nice copies. So it really depends, but I hope that the quality will improve. I mean, I see no reason why SBU won't do good copies now, you know, like 21st century, no reason to not do nice copies. From, of course, from Latvia, we have very nice high quality copies. Well, it really depends. I agree that a lot of material on our website is not of perfect quality, visually, I mean, but it doesn't, well, I personally, I cannot do anything about this. So we try to do our best in any way. I think of course, it's better than nothing. Of course, it's better to have something in poor quality than not to have it at all. So that's it.
I have a feeling that we'll hear more about institutions' availability of materials and these issues in the next talk. And I will thank you and use the opportunity to now introduce Ilya. Ilya Yushitel studied in Moscow, and then I think did his PhD in St. Petersburg, and is now working in the University of Vienna. I last met Ilya I think in the DH libraries, was it? No, it's in a session about newspapers, digital research of newspapers, a very exciting session in one of these Jewish digital humanities sessions. And I was very excited to hear about his vision and project, which he then named the Soviet Yiddish Press Digitization Startup Project. And he will talk about quantitative studies of Yiddish language and culture, accomplishments and necessities. Please, screen is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation. So right now I will open the presentation. So can you see it? Yeah. Okay. So I must first confess that actually I'm working at University of Vienna, but I'm also a PhD student. So the PhD I was doing in Moscow gradually migrated with me here. So I really have to finish it. So I'm just a student, but also a research assistant here. So right now I would like to deliver a more general talk about what's been doing with the DH resources for Yiddish, and I'm not pretending to make an ultimate theoretical overview or something, but just to show some tools that are already available and those which are necessary but not yet delivered. And I will also show some comparison of the resources selected for written by me, for written and spoken data that are of very good use. I will share then the presentation so that you can use the links in there and open these things and wrap up. And then, if I have time, I will talk about my personal research interest about Soviet Yiddish press and what's been doing there. So it may be a bit condensed. I'm sorry for that, but I will share then the slides. Okay, so quantitative tools are obviously important for anthropological and for linguistical research, and the advantages are clear. So convenient, it's convenient to use, not to go somewhere and just use online data banks. And also it's possible to find some rare features that we don't think of, but they exist, and in a large text databases we can find them. And diachronically we can research stuff that was actual a long time ago. And for Yiddish it's particularly important because the environment for Yiddish obviously changed after 1939 and during the 20th century. For dialectological research, which I'm actually studying in my PhD, text corpora are probably also of use because many non-standard features in languages like Yiddish, but also probably like Ukrainian, get into their texts, and sometimes even phonological, probably. So we can see some glosses even in the published data in newspapers. So it's really amazing, and if it's really so, as I hypothesize, so it's also important. And for anthropology, quick access to data is always beneficial. And nowadays, unfortunately, researchers have to compile sources themselves and I will follow this way. And sometimes important tools are missing, and there are good examples of statistical workarounds, for example, in this article by Isaac Bleeman. So it's not always very convenient. So general workflow, TH resource or study building. So tier 1 is collection of raw data, and here for books it's obviously scanned documents, which we can get in Yiddish Book Center, National Library of Israel, and also in multiple other sources like Finnish National Library, Russian State Library, and many, many more. And for spoken data, and also for anthropological data, we have interviews, spoken interviews, which can be found in such great resources as Heim, and also in Yiddish Book Center, and sometimes also they are not published online, and but we can still access them if you ask a researcher to share it. So then what should happen, basically, the digitization. And say optical character recognition used to be a problem about 7 years ago for Yiddish, but now it is done, it is solved, and we have different online sources where we have digitized data. For example, Yiddish Book Center has OCR platform where you can search for a single word, and it works quite well. JPress used to be not so well, but now it's improving. And for libraries, for traditional scanned documents, it's not available, but a researcher can himself or herself perform OCR using Tesseract 4, transcribers, and so on, and the quality is really good nowadays. For recordings of interviews for audio files, transcription, which is or text to audio, to text to speech, speech to text alignment, are not so done yet. So, for example, in website Heim, where there are 800 of hours of the interviews gathered from the various places in Eastern Europe, there is only limited transcription of the chapters and the main topics which are discussed. In Yiddish Book Center, we have a great project, for example, personal stories or something like that, which with translation to English. Unfortunately, it's embedded in video, so you can't use it as a separate text file, but still it's very good. And there is also a very good, unfortunately depreciated project called Yiddish Multimedia Corpus, which offers a transcription and alignment to this transcription, so you can search for a particular phrase or word. I will talk a little bit more about these projects in the next slides. So, spoken data transcription, why is it important nowadays? So it allows us to make search queries to spoken data and not listen to the whole record for the necessary feature. And nowadays, for well-developed languages like Russian, we have very sophisticated speech to text recognition. So in YouTube, for example, I with my students, if you want to study how people in Ukraine pronounce fricative "he," whether they say gradus or gradus. You can just open it. A student can do it. He downloads the text of interview of different people, and it's done. For Yiddish, unfortunately, it's not going to be this way. So there's a traditional way of doing it, making transcription aligned to audio, but it's very, very time consuming. So a HAIM project are not probably going to do it fully because it takes a lot of time. And but they developed at a HAIM, they developed a forced alignment tool where we have, if someone transcribed the whole text, it's aligned to parts of the audio. So we have kind of subtitles, and it's an interesting, it is an interesting work. Unfortunately, it's not, the results are not available right now, but hopefully, so they say that it's really helpful for that. And speech to text, so even though there are no Yiddish models yet, probably, so for English and Russian there are, probably it's not such impossible task because there are open source software like Kaldi, and there is a work where there was a researchers from Germany built a German automatic speech recognition model just using about 400 hours of transcribed audio. And for Yiddish, we actually have such a source, 400 hours of audiobooks which have OCR. So maybe if someone does it, it's not such an impossible task. Of course, the errors are inevitable, but maybe it's one of the things that maybe nowadays is possible to do. So when we had transcribed audio or OCR books, what we do the next tier is tagging, and actually for linguistic research it's very important. For example, part of speech tagging to build a corpus, lemmatization, aligning particular word form with its base form, and also syntax tagging to draw syntactical dependency trees. And it's available at corpus of modern Yiddish. But separate solutions, if I want, for example, to take a Yiddish text and perform a tagging on my data, are not available. So, for example, there is a perfect, amazing and developing project, UDPipe, Universal Dependencies. I will talk about it in next slide. And it's available for Hebrew. For Ladino, it's been developing. And not for Yiddish. No one doing something for Yiddish, unfortunately. So, yeah. For complex image documents, important thing is tagging. So separation means separation of different articles in news sheets, labeling the images, and in JPress, in archive for this website by National Library of Israel, it's there. And there are limited tagging possibilities, but still it's done. So Universal Dependencies project is it's developed for different languages, and its advantages is that it offers a morphological disambiguation. So when homonyms, the model tells us which option for homonym should be chosen. It's very, very convenient. And what else is very important, that no programming skills needed to parse the texts. So if you don't really know how to use Python or something, it's online available, and it's great for that. So for that, to make such, and the pipeline for making a parser like that is clear. You just have to make a tagged UD corpus, which can make a student or a person who has some time, I don't know, 50 hours of work or something. And then the model is language agnostic. It builds a parser, and therefore there are many languages like Ladina, like, I don't know, Caucasian languages with very small corpuses needed. And it's I think it's the threshold for entering is not so high. So it's one of the things that would be great to have. So then when we have this tag data, online access is necessary, and optimal platform for linguistic researchers corpus, obviously, and for search with scanned documents, it's something like JPress. They use actually proprietary software from Viridian company from the US. but there maybe are also some open source viewers for the newspapers. I would like to tell about one for data of speaking. There is a very interesting and actively developing project developed by Timofey Arhangelski from Hamburg nowadays. It's a open source platform for multimedia corpora. And if I may, I want to show how it looks like. Because just a second. It's made. This is example from Besserman dialect. It's Uralic language, but basically, platform is agnostic, language agnostic, and we can put the same data files from Yiddish. We have the same thing. So, for example, if we search for a word that is similar to Russian Aida or Turkish Hayde, we search for that, and we have lemmatized text. So here we mouse over roll over the original text, and we see the lemmas. We see Russian translation, and if we click, we can hear the extract of the video or audio if it works. Not very important right now, but the thing is that there is a video embedded, audio embedded, it's just an amazing project which can be installed with the Yiddish data, and it would be very interesting to see such results. Anyway, yeah. So then what is also very important to my mind is updating and adding some further details. Crowdsourcing, when people, volunteers who are interested in your data, add some text titles and also correct OCR, because optical character recognition, even the best models, they still are erroneous to some part. And maybe also I thought that maybe adding transcription to audio would be, for example, if you make automatic transcription of audio, correcting these errors would be also interesting. And one of the model examples for such things is project Truth by platform Truth by National Library of Australia. So functionality is pretty similar to JPress, to what National Library of Israel and other sources like that offer with the newspapers. What else is what is very specific for Truth is that they also develop, they offer sophisticated API, which allows an independent researcher to download, for example, given texts, I don't know, from a particular range of the newspapers. And also what is, I think, unique about Truth is the vibrant communities of people who call themselves Truthites from Australia probably and all around the world, who are correcting OCR and adding text to articles. And there are, they boast of 64,000 contributors, almost 400 millions of corrections. And if you just open their Hall of Fame, it's just amazing that it doesn't stop. And you can open the leaderboard for last May, and we see that some people just correct, I don't know, 48,000 of lines. And it's just amazing because it makes your data more searchable, better, and they somehow managed to make such a community. And if something like that happens with Jewish data, it would be also very important. So now I would like to show this comparison I made. So we won't go into details here. So for example, if we talk about newspapers, I'm sorry, something went wrong. So if you talk about newspapers, there are two projects, two databases, so National Library of Israel, and they have for East Europe only, for Poland, Ukraine, and Russia not really, they have 52,000 issues. And if with some assumptions, we can say that they have about 317 tokens, it means words. But the problem there is that there is no Soviet Yiddish. There is no data from Soviet Union, 0. So that's a huge, huge problem. Just about 5-6 months ago, a project Library UA, which the main aim is pretty similar to like a host service for newspapers. They published and scanned a lot of periodicals from Ukraine only, and there they have 10,000 issues. The only problem is that for some reason access is only from Ukrainian institutions, Ukrainian libraries, and even if you offer them some money as a university customer to get the subscription, it's not really easy. But hopefully it will, they will get over it. But nowadays, unfortunately, you just don't. If you open the website, you see the full bibliography, you see the front pages of the digitized newspapers, but you just can't open them for some reason. And so there are other important interesting projects, but I think I don't have time to discuss them. Feel free then to browse through this presentation. For spoken data we discussed. There is a HAIM with 800 hours of the transcript audio, and Yiddish multimedia corpus is just minuscule, but it offers complex search queries and something else. So if I have, do I have about 5 minutes or so? Yeah, okay. So I would like to wrap up this part. So for raw data, the necessity, what is needed now, is the data from Soviet Union. It's absent in open source platforms, and that's the problem. And something like Truth API would be also good, but it's not so important. The problem of efficient OCR is solved, I would say. POS taggers, mainly, that's a problem. Even though there are some taggers, they're either not accessible or or also very, very rare. So it's not clear whether they really work. And online platforms, if you have your data, you can upload it, for example, to Sketch Engine and make your own corpus. So it's for individual researchers, it's good. Crowdsourcing tools are not there. But that's a question where they are, because maybe Truth and Australian project is just so unique like that. So for spoken data, I won't discuss it right now. And right now, if I have 5 minutes or something, I would just tell why Soviet Yiddish is so important. I would say that here in this map, we see the borders of Soviet Union before 1939. And we see that actually parts of what today is Ukraine and Belarus and are outside of Soviet Union. And that's exactly what we have, the data from there, from this western part of border. We have in JPress. They write, we have that there are newspapers from Ukraine. That's only Western Ukraine. However, we see that if we look at this dialectological map, we see that a lot of much of the Ukrainian dialects and also the Lithuanian dialect are there on the other side of the border. And if we want to study it, we need this data. So press is also good because it has clear link to location. Rural localities are also represented. Clear temporal organization, so we know where was a certain word used. Some other things. And so that's really important to have some data like that. And so where do we have it? So in the list of the Yiddish periodicals available at the website of Hebrew University of Jerusalem. So we have about 95 titles and 307 year volumes. Means in Russian it would be Годовая подшивка, or in German Jahrgang. In English there is no nice word. And if we compare it to what actually we have in Russia, And Ukraine, it's not so much. And so here we see that this is the numbers. We don't have now time to discuss it very much, but the problem is that these places usually don't really publish these catalogs, and we don't really know what is there. For example, Russian State Library is not going to digitize their catalogs. Ukraine National Library of Ukraine is also not going to do it. So the other two libraries actually have something like that, but it's also not so easily searchable. So what I've done was kind of putting it all together and making some graphs to see what we have there where. So this is a terribly looking difficult page graph, but each line represents a single library, for example, or a bibliography. So for example, this gray line represents the data, the number of unique volumes per year in title volumes in a given gray line is in Israel. So in this index of Yiddish newspapers, only for the region, the Soviet Union. Yeah, and we see that there is something, but it's much less than there is in other libraries. For example, red gives for Moscow. Moscow has a lot of stuff for given years. Kiev has some stuff, a lot of stuff from 1936 for a reason, and not so much for the rest. So we really see that these are different and different sources. And by the way, some of the newspapers exist only in some libraries. For example, about 200 of newspapers are stored only in Kiev. And yeah, that means that they should be scanned, because it's a pity if we lose something that is not copied somewhere. Yeah, I will just briefly show what can we get from the data like that. For example, if we look at unique amount of unique titles, it means годовая подшивка, so year volumes per year, so without copies, we see that there are clear temporal patterns. For example, in year 31, it was a peak of the Yiddish publishing in Soviet Union. And here, for some reason, maybe because of the civil war, maybe not, there was a drop. Here we also see a particular story. Why after war there was a small peak. Yeah, I will just quickly show what other types of things we can get if we just have accessible data. So here we can see the red means there were more publishings in a particular city. So here we have cities in regions. For example, we have Kyiv. And if we look in Kyiv and Kharkiv, we see that Kharkiv actually had more newspapers than Kyiv. And that was also for a reason, because it was the first capital of Ukraine. And it was until the year when it was made a normal regular city. So it's a lot of things may be done with this kind of data. For example, we can adjust the number of published things to the number of speakers of Yiddish. There is a nice, interesting census data. And we can see that we can't really compare Kharkiv to Moscow, because Moscow was huge. There were central publishing houses. But if we compare it with the number of people who lived there and spoke Yiddish, Kharkiv goes just more. So the turquoise bar means the adjusted number of publications. So a lot of things may be done when we have data, even when we have data on it. For example, the last thing I want to say is that when we see this particular uptick in the data after the war, so 47, 48, the person, yeah, and if you look at the data, like each line represents publications in a city. So all of the, if something in Yiddish exists in a given city, so green goes for Ukraine, red goes for Belarus, and this golden one is for Russia. We see that in year 1941, everything obviously just was aborted. And here we see that in Moscow in year 1948, there was no periodical for about 15 years. Why so? It's because of the story, this story about the Yiddish Anti-Fascist Committee and the Enikite newspaper, which many of you know. Yeah, the board of this newspaper was executed, and it meant the end. And so what I mean by that is that sometimes we know how to interpret some of the data because we know about Enikite, but sometimes the data is not clear. Something is happening, but we don't really know why. Why people just stopped to publish some newspapers? Was it because of the economical conditions or was there some central orders? It's not really clear. Maybe if some archival work is performed, these matters can be cleaned up. But sometimes data tells us a story we don't know really how to interpret. But it's still better than not to know anything about the data we have. And I think that, yeah, it's very important to work with the data from Soviet Union about Yiddish because it's not accessible yet. So thank you very much. I'm sorry for the long presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. You've done amazing work. I will ask the obvious question that everybody wants to know. Can we have this slideshow?
Yeah,
would you mind sharing it? It's extremely helpful and very important. And I am sorry that Professor Yonzo and Eyal Miller from the National Library, Yonzo from Tel Aviv University and Eyal Miller could not be here. They wanted to, partly because they wanted to basically add to your plea, and not only regarding Soviet Yiddish newspapers, but also any Soviet Jewish newspapers. The situation is actually urgent. You know, it's the right time to digitize them and first of all to preserve them because they are falling apart, and then we need a really strong project that will go through the stages that you described so well. From OCR to making it available into analysis. And this is something that I think the National Library, JPRS, is very much interested in. Of course, there's always the question of money, but I think a collaboration of the library with scholars could apply for a national fund, maybe European fund, I don't know, which and do this really important projects and contribute to basically your efforts, I think. I just pasted here a couple of links. The last one is my email, so if anybody wants to contact me regarding any of the things I will say now, thank you for the link to the presentation. You're very welcome, but also the second link is short tutorial to Transcribo. So if one of you has Yiddish or Hebrew or Ladino or Judeo-Arabic sources and would like to try and OCR them in this better OCR quality that you mentioned, this will be a first step. Also to the model that we trained for Jewish languages. The first link is to something that is going to happen next week. In Princeton, we're going to have this workshop regarding NLP, the natural language processing for languages, let's say, under-resourced or languages, and Yiddish is one of them, and I will be helping Efraim Berkovich there to train a model for NLP using Spacey. And what we will be using is actually a crowdsourcing platform, and we'll be very happy for everybody that can help us tag Yiddish sources in order to train better and open tools. So this is the reason also that I'm giving my mail here. Ilya, we have so much to talk about. And thank you for the presentation. I will contact you later, but of course, if anybody else wants to ask questions, this is the time. I think we can take 15 more minutes officially for questions to either Ilya or the previous speakers. And I think it's okay if you can either raise your hand or write in the chat or even open the mic and just talk.
Can I?
Sure.
Yeah,
Hi.
I have just not a question, but a comment toward accessibility of Yiddish press in St. Petersburg. So it's on a website is available, like link as it available. However, in real life, it's not, because all sets are closed and they are like moving between the buildings. So if one wants to work there or planning go there, it's not really a good idea, because it's like for 5 years, it's closed, all Yiddish press in St. Petersburg. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
If I may, I just would comment to this comment. So I actually, this preliminary project about the catalog, I'm trying to locate and understand which things are unique for a given library. So, for example, if the problem of the quality of the preserving these funds is also, I think, actual for Ukraine, and if we understand what is unique for example, National Library of Russia in St. Petersburg, it's easier to address them and press them to open at least these unique fonts, so that at least this limited number of data sources would be published. But yeah, and there are actually rumors about the, I don't know, flooding in this exact building, in this exact room. But yeah, so it's not, something needs to be done very, very promptly with that. Thank you.
If I may add in the meantime, at the Open University, we had a project on 19th century Hebrew newspapers, and that's where we trained a model for newspapers in Hebrew. And I think once even the scans are there, you know, this is a safe place to begin. And then, of course, we need a lot of resources to set something like JPress. Obviously, they would be a great destination for the data, but starting with that, we also have, I want to see if I can find the link. Yes, the recording of this program will be available on YouTube. I'll see if I can find the link quickly. Histories, the tool that we created. Sorry, I can't find it to make the corpus available for search in better OCR, and the data can continue so much to live, you know, if it's open, and I can only really join your calls to do something about it. But I guess it will not be done. It's for us to do. So maybe maybe start a collaboration, international collaboration. Maybe
but there is also a positive story, for example, about this library. So people doing scanning for not a huge grant, so it's not clear where they get funding. So probably from, I don't know, maybe some oligarchs in Ukraine. They are doing they made a measure, a great thing. They scanned about 70% of what was published in Ukraine. It's not available, but still sometimes something like that happens. So there are also positive developments in this. And yeah, and there are so many different initiatives. For example, I didn't mention the data from Birbidjani Stern, the newspaper that ran for about 50 years in Yiddish in Birbidjan, is scanned by the Library of Birbidjan. And to get this data, you need to go to Birbidjan, pay about 10 rubles. It's about 7 US cents for a single issue. So there are 3 pages. You give them a flash drive and you get what you need. So online it's not accessible, but if you go there, you get something. So sometimes there are so many different uncoordinated efforts that I think it's important to know what's going on where. Somewhere the situation is not so bad.
Semyon, I was wondering if you are with us and can, I think I just muted him.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, good. I was wondering if you would like to say something for.
It's a pleasure to be there, to be with you today. I'm abroad, and Sinai very likely was able to take a command on this event, and it's great pleasure to see all of you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions? We are past the time, basically, I think. But if there are any more questions, I think we can take it further. Maybe I'll just repeat what I said in the beginning and invite you to the, oh, I don't see it now, to the Facebook group. For those of you who have Facebook, Ruach Digitalit, or DHI Israel, to continue discussions and be in touch and network, and I guess also maybe in the page of the Nevzlin Center. And I would like to also thank the hosts again, and Masha also for being here to support this. And thank you very much to the 3 speakers. That was fascinating. And also for being so open about the presentation and your the links, even the secret that you shared, Anastasia. I think we will finish here, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Sorry, это казанутник. Can you speak?